Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you as promised for one of my Q&As ahead of this weekend's game against West Ham. Thank you as always for the support you give me on this channel. Thank you for all the comments I get on social media in terms of Twitter and my comments on YouTube as well. Most of them very nice ones, and I appreciate all your kind words, and will continue to try and bring you as much of the latest Arsenal news and views as I possibly can over the coming times. First of all, look, it's there, it's up. I get more questions and about what that is, which is usually hiding down the side there, than I do actual questions about Arsenal. So I thought I'd actually put it up. It's not up properly. It's actually balanced pretty precariously on that chest of drawers behind me there. So I imagine at some point during this video, it's probably going to tip over and smash everywhere. If it does, it'll be funny for you guys to watch, I'm sure. Not going to be quite so funny for me to pick up. But we'll have to wait and see. It normally, I get so many questions over these. I thought I might as well get this out of the way. It normally hangs behind my shoulder up there on a lovely proper hook, but to down here, which you can't see, is actually my son's bed, and we took this down because it's pretty heavy, and we didn't really want it falling on him while he slept, so it's a bit of a health and safety hazard. So we've taken it down, but he is moving in next door with his sister soon in bunk beds, so it's going to go hang pride of place back up in a bedroom. What it is actually Highbury, final day of Highbury, the Wigan game back in 2006. It's made up of loads of different pictures of the day itself, forming this big montage, and you can't see it down here, but I'm in it. There's me and my dad outside Highbury there. There's another one with my dad, and there's me. Yeah, it was designed by some very clever designer, which I got, and I love it. But yeah, it's been hiding down the side there, but it will be going back up against the wall at some point. So there you go. That's all the questions I get about what that picture is down the side of the wall there. It's answered. And now after 2 minutes, I will get on to the actual Arsenal Q&A, which is what we're all here for. I'm not going to waste any more time because, as usual, these things have so many questions. I might have to split it into two parts, as I've done the last few, just because it's going to otherwise be about an hour and a half long video. And as always, the caveat with this, thank you for all your questions that you've replied to my tweet on Twitter about it. But if I don't answer yours, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because it's probably been answered. The question or opinion or comment has probably been answered before already, because as you would expect, there's lots that are very similar. Like, there's plenty on here that talks about Thomas Partey and Houssem Aouar. There's no point me answering them all because it will just be the same thing over and over again. So as I said, I'm not ignoring you. It's just that I've probably already answered it elsewhere in the Q&A. Right, that's it. Let's get going, shall we? Because that's what you're all here for. Let's start with Liam, who begins with I think, I wonder what two players you're going to be asked about. But then he does well to actually not talk about Aouar and Partey. So seriously though, outside of the two midfielders everyone know we're in for, there's been very little reporting of other targets. Do you know if the club has backup plan if we don't land our top targets? Well, in terms of Thomas Partey, I certainly do. I know that Daniel Torreira at Porto is a player that Arsenal have been interested in and have been initial discussions with representatives. There's been obviously no bid or anything like that, but he is a potential backup option for Thomas Partey. And Aouar at Roma is a player they've looked at as well. I know there's been lots of talk in Italy about a potential swap deal involving Torreira and Aouar. As far as I'm aware, that's never actually been discussed, but Aouar's representatives are certainly aware that Arsenal have been keeping tabs on him, but he again is very much in the list of potential backup options. But Thomas Partey remains a priority in that midfield area, so we'll have to wait and see over the next few weeks how that progresses. But Arsenal obviously do have lists. That's what they do. They have, they'll be going into this window with a list of sort of 5 possible options for the positions. If they can't get the first one, they'll try and get the second, and so on. So there are options. In terms of Aouar, I don't know really who the other options are if Arsenal can't get him, whether they go for another option if they can't get him, but he's very much the first choice in that area as well. Sandeep says, been seeing lots of surface reports Arteta might move Auba up top to maximise his energy and putting in the defensive shift. Do you think that's happening? Would Auba be as lethal now? I can't see Auba moving back to central striker at the moment. I have to say, I think he's very much ingrained in that left-sided position, unless Arsenal go to a 2 up top at some point, which again I'm not sure. I think it's either going to be this formation that we're seeing now, or it's going to be a straight 4-3-3. But I think Auba now is going to be that left-sided player. I think Arteta likes him there. Look, he still scores a hell of a lot of goals in that position, and and I think he's just giving the team an awful lot from that side at the moment. So I don't see Arteta changing things up very soon. I know there is a lot of clamour for Aouar to go back up top as a central striker, but I think for me, from what I understand, certainly Arteta likes either Lacazette or Nketiah there, and Aouar very much is the left-sided player coming inside, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Devanch, I hope I got your name right there, says Arsenal exit updates: Guendouzi, Torreira, Kolasinac, Mustafi, Socrates, and if there are any others up for transfer. Look, there's plenty up for transfer. Pretty much the whole squad's up for transfer at the moment if a decent bid comes in. There aren't many that Arsenal would absolutely say no, not for sale if an offer came in that they thought was doable. But you kind of, as you were, look, Torreira, I think he will be heading back to Italy. I'll be surprised if he stays. Arsenal just need to get a decent offer that they find acceptable for him. There's been plenty of interest already. We know about Torino, we know about Fiorentina. Milan were interested. That seems to have faded away now. They seem to have moved on to other people, other targets in that area. But Torino very interested in Torreira, as the reports out of Italy suggest. It's just whether Arsenal can strike the right deal with them, an acceptable deal for what they want. Arsenal obviously would want preferably to sell Torreira on a permanent basis, but in the reports coming out of Italy suggest that at the moment the sides that are interested in Torreira are preferring a loan option with an obligation to buy or an option to buy at the end of it. So I think we'll still see a little bit more negotiation going on, but obviously Torreira not even in the squad against Fulham. I think that says a lot about where he is at the moment in the stage of his Arsenal career. You know, if Arsenal can get a deal done for Torreira, then they will. And it's similar with the rest of them. Kolasinac is still an important player for Arteta. He was the only defender who made the bench against Fulham. But Arsenal will be very happy to get him off the wage bill if they can do. They've got Tierney obviously at the left-sided defender. The Saka can play there as well. Ainsley Maitland-Niles can play there. So it just makes sense that if Arsenal can get a decent offer for Kolasinac, then they'll happily accept it. I mean, he'll get him off the wage bill. He's pretty well paid. He's well into six figures a week, Kolasinac, because he came in as a free transfer. So he's got a very nice wage at Arsenal, which is kind of hamstringing Arsenal in terms of can they get rid of him. But if they can, there's been talk about West Ham. I'm not sure if that will happen. If that's going to happen or not, I think it'd probably be more likely a German club coming in for him. But Kolasinac, from what I understand, is pretty happy in London, as he would be, earning the money that he is, and is not actively pushing for a move. And the fact he's even making the bench at the moment will probably, in his mind, think, well, I've still got an opportunity to play some football here at Arsenal. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And it's the same with the rest of them. All of them you mentioned, as I said, Mustafi, Socrates. I've always said there's been strong reports in Italy about Socrates and Napoli. And Napoli do want him. They've gone on record in saying that. But from what I understand, Socrates, again, is very, very happy in London. He's got 1 year left in his contract. He's just had a new baby. He's very handsomely paid at Arsenal. And he's in no rush to leave. So it'll have to be a very good sporting project to come in and tempt him away at the moment. And obviously, he's still very much part of Arsenal's squad, even though he's not featuring. So, I keep saying I'll have to wait and see, but we just do. It just all depends on what offers Arsenal receive, and if they get ones that they are happy with, then they'll try and get these players out the door. But it's one thing Arsenal and another club agreeing a deal. It's another thing the player agreeing a deal, because if the player's happy in London and is very well paid and is potentially not going to get his money elsewhere, it's very difficult to move him on, as Arsenal found to their cost many, many times before, and are finding to their cost this summer as well. Shabab says, consider we get either Aouar and Partey. What do you think should be a realistic target for us in the league, top 4 or top 5? Also, if we don't get any of the two and manage with the same squad, then where do you think Arsenal finish? I think even with this current squad, Arsenal can have a good go at the top 4. I think that has to be the target. I'm not saying they can do it or will do it, but that has to be the target. Arsenal are a decent team for me, because now they're pretty well coached. They're very well coached, and they've got a clear structure and a clear plan. So, I would not rule Arsenal out. They're obviously miles behind Liverpool. They're miles behind Manchester City, but I'm not convinced Manchester United and Chelsea are over the hill and far away when it comes to Arsenal at all. Arsenal know how to play against the top sides at the moment. They're picking results up against the top sides. It's as long as they can break down teams who are going to sit deep and not give them much. as in space in the final third. That's the area where they've come unstuck recently. They were very good against Fulham with that. Willian made a massive difference. When you've got a striker like Aubameyang, you've got a very good chance of winning games. So as long as you keep it tight, which Arsenal are doing at the moment, then they've got a decent chance. So for me, the target has to be top four with Partey or without Partey, with Aouar or without Aouar. I think the target has to be top four. That's what they've got to aim for. And I think even without both of them, they've got a chance. I wouldn't say they're absolutely going to do it. I still think they're behind, but they've got a chance. Throw those two into the mix, and then bingo, Arsenal have got to be going for top four, in my opinion. Crumbly Garner asks, what's our situation with our squad for the upcoming season? From what I understand, we've got too many non-homegrown players already. That's before we possibly get more. Yeah, Arsenal do have an issue with this, especially after the sale of Martinez. The rules are pretty complicated, and I'm pretty rubbish at them, I have to admit. And I constantly have to refresh my my sort of memory about them. But the number of non-homegrown players over 21 is the key number here, and because you can have a maximum of 17, and Arsenal can only name 5 at the moment homegrown players over the age of 21. So that's following Martinez's exit. So the number of players in the squad will be capped at 23 at the moment, and where it's 22 now, Martinez is left, and so that's not ideal. So obviously you've got the younger players who don't count in that, and that adds the numbers up. So you've got Saka, Nketiah, even players like Guendouzi, Saliba as well, because they registered him last season, which is handy. But if they bring in new players, which they will, I mean, obviously they're trying to get the goalkeeper in at the moment, Renarson. We've talked about Thomas Partey and Aouar at the moment. They're going to need to move players on, sort of 2 or even 3 if they get the 2 midfielders on, or not be able to register them at all, which won't be ideal. So they do have problems with it, and it's something they're going to have to solve over the next few weeks. They're not insurmountable problems by any means, because we are expecting players to move on. Players like Torreira, potentially Guendouzi, Socrates, as we've mentioned, even Mustafi, players like that, Kolasinac possibly. So as long as Arsenal get those players on, then the issue is not going to be too big. It's a case of just getting those players on, and you also do have the option, obviously, of not registering certain players, which we haven't even talked about Ozil yet. So they do have issues with it, but they're not insurmountable issues. So I wouldn't expect Arsenal fretting too much about it at the moment. Zondo says, if we are unable to land a creative midfielder in this window, is it a possibility that Willian can play in a 10 in a 4-3-3? The possibility of Auba, Pepe and Willian on the pitch together seems nice. I mean, it absolutely is. Arteta's already mentioned that. He said he can play on either wing or he can play centrally. So, and we've seen it already. We saw against Fulham even, although he started on the right, whenever he was coming in central areas, he was causing plenty of trouble. So yeah, it is absolutely an option. And I do think long-term 4-3-3 is probably the way that Arteta wants to go. But the formation he's got at the moment is working well, I think, especially without that sort of guaranteed that real out-and-out playmaker, central playmaker. So Willian could fill that role, but I'm not sure right now that's the one he's going to go for. I still think, certainly for the foreseeable future, until potentially any new midfield arrivals come in, then 3-4-3 is the way that he's going to go. And then you're going to have that battle of Pepe and Willian. Pepe obviously started on the bench, came on against Fulham. Didn't stick around too long after the final whistle. I noticed didn't look too pleased with having to come off the bench. But what you're going to do when you got Willian playing as well as he did in front of you, and I think as well Pepe will probably have to start on the bench this weekend because Willian's not going to lose his place, and I can't imagine Arteta's going to change his formation. Joey says, hello Charles, how good is Emil Smith-Rowe and what impact could he have on Arsenal this season? Also, which position would he fit into, as I know he's primarily as a 10 and our current 3 at the back system doesn't utilise one? It's a good question, Joey. And look, how good is Emil Smith-Rowe? I think he's very, very good. He's one of my favourite young players at Arsenal. He's been really unlucky with injuries. You talk to anyone at Huddersfield about how good he was there, they absolutely loved him. They thought he was special. You speak to people out there, they think he's nailed on to be an England international in the coming years. The issue is, like you said, his preferred position is a 10. He can play out wide and coming inside from the central areas, but certainly he likes to be more of a central player as a 10. And as you said, Arsenal's formation doesn't really fit in that type of player, as Mesut Ozil's found out to his cost. But he is a very good player, and Arsenal were planning this year on him sticking around and having a season with the squad, Whether that changes before the transfer window, we'll have to wait and see, because he's injured at the moment, which isn't ideal, and has been the case with Emil an awful lot in the last couple of years. So he can't really seem to get a real good period of time training under his belt. He seems to be picking up these injuries, which is a slight bit of a concern. And with Willian coming in, with potentially another playmaker coming in, then that might lessen his ability of getting minutes. So Arteta might decide, what, we'll send him out. But you've got to think, between now and Christmas anyway, or now in January, Arsenal got an awful lot of games coming up. The Europa League starting, the league games are so crammed into it because of the late start this season as well, that certainly before January there's an awful lot of football to be played. So, and there's going to be a lot of rotation there, so maybe he'll stick around. But the idea, from what I was told a few weeks ago ahead of the season, that Arsenal weren't planning on sending Smith Rowe out, and Arteta wanted to have a good look at him for the first half of the season. I do wonder whether that might change as we get closer to the transfer window, because an awful lot of clubs are looking at Smith Rowe and wouldn't mind and want to take him on loan for the season. Ollie Thorpe says, as the current squad stands, how do you think we'll do this season? I've already answered that, Ollie, so I'm not going to go over it again. But he said, and what impact would Partey and Aouar have on our expectations? Because for me, they drastically change our fortunes for the season. They would. There's no doubt about it. If Arsenal managed to get both of those players, which for me I think is still unlikely, but if they did manage to get both of those players, it makes a massive difference. I mean, you stick Thomas Partey into the midfield, it makes a huge difference, both defensively and offensively, I think, because a lot of people see Partey as just a midfield enforcer who's going to come in and shield the defence, but he's got a lot more of his game than that. He's really come on in the last few years, and you look at his numbers, his passes, how forward passes he does. He drives through from midfield. He does get through. He's getting more and more in support of the attack as he gets older and more experienced. So I think he improves Arsenal at both ends of the pitch specifically, but he certainly does improve things at the back as well. So I think you stick him in there, and he's going to make a huge difference. You get Aouar in there as well, and then you're looking at a very, very different Arsenal team for me, and expectations levels will certainly go up. I'm not saying that would bridge the gap that exists between Liverpool and Manchester City, because I still think they're another level, and I think with Thiago on his way to Liverpool, for me, I think that pretty much guarantees Liverpool the title. I'll be very surprised if Man City managed to bridge the gap that existed last season between them and Liverpool. I think Liverpool, they needed a midfield signing, a top quality midfield signing, and they're certainly getting that in Thiago. But going back to Arsenal and your question there, Ollie, I think certainly on my expectations, if Arsenal managed to get both of those players, then you've got to be looking top four for me. Cooper says, there's massive rumours that we're going to be signing Aouar and he's going to be playing attacking midfield ahead of Ceballos and Partey if we sign him. But every time I've seen Aouar, he loves to sit deep. And would this work in our current setup? I don't think it works in the current setup. But for me, I think if Arsenal did manage to get Aouar, then he'd be playing in a more advanced role. Certainly, I don't think he'd be sitting deep. It depends against. You kind of wonder. I'm not sure, because you talk there. You say. Playing with Ceballos and Partey, but I'd be surprised if Granit Xhaka doesn't start pretty much every single game, even with those players. I think Arteta loves Granit Xhaka, and I think Granit Xhaka is really important to the way Arsenal played. I don't think it's a given that Xhaka suddenly makes way if those players come in. I think you look at Ceballos, for me, the fact he's on loan as well, he's not an Arsenal player. I think he would be the one more in trouble if Aouar came in or Partey came in for me than necessarily Xhaka, because I think Xhaka's so key. But so yeah, I understand what you're saying there, Cooper, about how would it work in the current setup if Aouar came in, but I'm not sure if they managed to get Aouar. I think that would probably change Arteta's thinking when it comes to formation. Aaron says, how difficult will it be to raise the funds to go for Partey and Aouar? Emil is gone. It looks like Torreira is going, but not with money up front. Are Arsenal going to be able to afford to bring in one of these two players? They're going to try. They're certainly going to try. Like you said, the Martinez's money coming. The slight difficulty, certainly with Partey, is obviously Atletico don't want to lose Partey. It's not a case like Aouar, Lyon are willing to lose Aouar should they get an acceptable offer. With Partey, it's very much Atletico saying, look, you pay the release clause. We're not negotiating. You pay his release clause, which is £44 million, 50 million euros. then you can have him. But it's different. The way that works, it's pretty much money up front from as far as I'm aware in terms of how it worked with La Liga and release clauses. So you can't really negotiate a structured deal. Now, whether as the window progresses and we get closer to the deadline, that Atletico sort of soften their stance a little bit and say to Arsenal, okay, we will negotiate. It doesn't have to necessarily be about that release clause. Then it raises the possibility that Arsenal will be able to do a more structured deal. But so it is going to be really hard to get the money. But you've got to remember, certainly for Aouar as well, they wouldn't be paying that 60 million up front if it was 60 million euros, which Lyon at the moment say they want to get for him. If they did do something, it could be a structured deal, say 20 million up front, and then the rest over the period of his contract, which most transfers are. You look at the Pepe deal last year, that was very heavily structured for Arsenal, so it worked in a way that they could afford him, even though they didn't have much money. The issue again there with Lyon is that you're negotiating with Aouar, who's just renowned how difficult he is to deal with, and how determined he is to get the best possible financial deal for his club. So it might be a little bit difficult with that regard. But so yeah, it is going to be difficult. But they certainly need to sell a couple more for me. Martinez is a start, but they need to do more. They need to get rid of Torreira. I still think they need to get rid of Guendouzi. The whole Guendouzi thing, it just doesn't make much sense to me because he's 2 years left of his contract now. Arsenal really need to get rid of him in this window because it would be a big turnaround if they manage to get him to sign a new contract. Which this summer you either want to sell him or get him tied down to a new contract, because you don't want him getting down to the final year of his contract. He's already lost value because of what's gone on and the fallout of Mikel Arteta and how clubs across Europe know that he is Arsenal are desperate to get him out the door. If you let him get to his final year of his contract, and suddenly that you're looking at a 20, 25, 30 million pound player suddenly heading down to 10 million pounds, something like that, which you don't want at all. So yeah, it's going to be difficult, Aaron. In answer to your question, it's been difficult already this summer. Arsenal have been doing their best to get players out the door, haven't managed it until Martinez has gone. So it's going to be tough, but it's what they're paid for. They've got to try and get these players out. Let's have a look. Sam says, morning Charles, with only 2 weeks left of the window and having only been linked consistently with two central midfielders, one being Aouar, who I just can't see happening. Are we setting ourselves up for a Thomas Partey release clause triggering on deadline day? It's all very hypothetical, Sam. It's a tough one for me. For me to answer that. I don't know how to answer it. We could be. Everyone likes an exciting deadline day, but Mikel Arteta would certainly like to have players in through the door before we get to deadline day and be scrambling around right at the end. But I don't know. I just can't answer it. It's all hypothetical. We'll have to wait and see, I'm afraid. CBU says, do you expect Arsenal to tell us about the exact amount of price players are sold for? No. No, they won't. Everything's they never talk about their transfer fees, Arsenal. We will tend to get word of what it is, but in terms of publicly putting out there, Arsenal will never do it. But it does slip out. Like for instance, Emil Martinez will be about £20 million all in, but Arsenal won't ever confirm that on the record. We obviously get steers off the record, but on the record they won't. They just don't do it. Johannes says, have you got any updates on Guendouzi? In my opinion, he's too great a talent to be frozen out of the squad for a whole season, but also seems unlikely that any club would spend big money on him. Well, I was just talking about Guendouzi earlier, and so I pretty much covered it all there. Arteta says that everyone's got a clean slate, but Guendouzi wasn't in the squad against Fulham. He's doing his best, certainly on social media. We saw him tweeting a picture during the game, at the start of the game, saying "Come on, lads," or whatever it was, which is good PR for Guendouzi. It's certainly it's showing that he's taken an interest in how the team are doing, which we didn't see any of during the end of last season when he was frozen out by Mikel Arteta. But and I agree, he's too great a talent to really be frozen out, and I think he would have a part to play. But I certainly think until the transfer window closes anyway, that I'd be surprised if we see Guendouzi come back into the reckoning for now. Once the transfer window's closed and it's clear that he won't be going anywhere, certainly until January, then maybe Mikel Arteta will start to factor him back into his plans for the squad, because we've got so many games coming up between now and Christmas, and you don't really want a key member of that squad, or a player who has been a key member of that squad and is an established under 21 international, not being able to contribute. And so we'll have to wait and see, but I will be surprised that if we see too much of Guendouzi or anything of Guendouzi until the transfer window is closed. DJ CPR says, "Hi Charles, I was wondering if there was any update or truth to the rumour that Arteta was looking to bring Dennis Bergkamp into the coaching staff. I personally think it would be a great touch." I don't think so. From what I understand about the situation of Bergkamp, that's unlikely one to happen, certainly for now. Arteta, we've seen, has brought in a couple of new coaches this summer. Young, up-and-coming coaches, ones that really sort of fit his profile. Arteta very much wants to be the boss. I think he suddenly brings Dennis Bergkamp into the mix just because of who he is and how much of a legend he is at this club. I think it potentially makes it a... I don't know, you just wonder if there might be a clash, and Bergkamp's a very strong-willed character as it is. So I'd be surprised for me if Bergkamp comes in as coach. Arteta's got his squad together now. He's very much the boss of that squad. So I'd be surprised for me. Right, so what we got coming up? Sorry, I just saw a message flash up there. I was just having to read it because obviously as I'm doing this, we're still slap bang in the middle of transfers and there's lots of messages coming in, but nothing too important. This is a tough one. Joey, where do you see the long-term position for Maitland-Niles? It's really tough for me because he can be so good in so many different positions. So it's like, where do you see Maitland-Niles? Could he be the right wing back? Could he be better than Bellerin in that position? I mean, I think he could, but I still think as long as Bellerin's at the club, he's going to be right wing back. Left wing back has been fantastic, but you're keeping Saka out the side there, and obviously Maitland-Niles is naturally right-footed. Saka is naturally left-footed, and you want Saka to play. So it's a tough one for me, and it is why I suppose that Maitland-Niles is quite up for. Well, not quite up for, but has been open to the possibility of leaving. So it's a tough one. I just think he's a man of many talents. He can play left, he can play right, he can play centre, and sometimes you need players in that squad. So I don't think it's a case of Maitland-Niles he has to nail down a certain position in the squad. I think for me, he's just one of these players that we're always going to see. We're always going to see him filling in different roles, and I've said it before. I don't want Maitland-Niles to go. I want him to stay, and I think he's certainly showing now. I think he's got the place on that left side now. I'll be surprised if Saka comes in and totally takes it off him at the moment. I think he's playing too well, and he will certainly have that place for now. I'd be surprised, say Saka comes in to play against West Ham at the weekend. I think we'll still see Maitland-Niles over there. DP3 says, squad seems to be getting stronger. What does this mean for Emil Smith-Rowe, Willock and Reece Nelson? Surely two will go out on loan. I do wonder about Reece Nelson. I've been saying for a while that I wouldn't be surprised if Nelson heads out on loan before the window. He's obviously got Pepe in front of him on the right-hand side. He's obviously got Willian now in front of him on the right-hand side. You do wonder how much he's going to play. So a good season away on loan would probably do Reece Nelson the world of good. So I wouldn't be surprised before the window closes if something might happen with Reece Nelson. The other two, I don't think Willock's going to go out on loan. I think Willock's going to play plenty of football. I'd be surprised if he went out on loan. I think he's very much part of Arteta's plans. And Smith-Rowe, like I said, for last I understood, Smith-Rowe was going to be in Arteta's plans this season. Whether the injuries start to affect that, and Arteta thinks it's better to send him out as if the offers continue to come in, and there have been offers for him so far in this window, then he might change his mind. But for me, I think Smith-Rowe and Willock, very much as it stands at the moment, will be sticking around. Reece Nelson, I think, is probably one to watch in terms of heading out the door. Right, I'm going to stop that for now because we're up to the half an hour mark and there's still loads to go through. So I'm going to stop that for now. This is the end of part 1, but part 2 of the Q&A will be coming soon. So thank you very much for taking part in this. Thank you for watching, and keep an eye out for the second part, which will be on its way very soon.